Alrighty. Well, thank you so much, Chattanooga Film Festival, for having me. Thank you, of course, to Tennessee Entertainment Commission for sponsoring us to do these workshop series every year. We usually do them exclusively virtually, and this year we're doing hybrid, which is really exciting. So look out for some of our Seed&Spark instructors at festivals throughout the fall across different locations: Film Fest Knox, International Black Film Festival, Nashville Film Festival. But the best Tennessee Film Festival is happening right now, Chattanooga Film Festival. Um,
Thank
so
you.
I hope you're all enjoying the programming. And little background on myself: I'm Megan Ross. I've been the head of creator success at Seed&Spark since 2020, aka the freshman year of the pandemic. Um, I am also a writer, director, producer, comedian, and middle child, which explains a lot about me. I've made 6 shorts, and for 5 of those, I was in charge of building and tracking the budget, which my type A ass loves, but my broke ass hates. So this workshop is really helpful for those who are not only new to filmmaking, but also for those more experienced who are trying to figure out how to cut corners without compromising quality um, on your upcoming projects. So let's get into it. So I just want to briefly talk about Seed&Spark, and then we'll get into the workshop stuff. But Seed&Spark's an indie filmmaker crowdfunding platform. We're the only one that's geared towards creatives exclusively, not products and services. So we have projects on the site that are primarily shorts, web series, features. We get a lot of podcast series, scripted podcast series, um, theater productions, film festivals. Let me just close my door. My husband and I both work from home, so we like hear each other on calls. Our success rate is over twice of all competitors. Kickstarters is only 36%. And the reason we have such a high success rate is because each project that's submitted to us gets reviewed and provided personalized feedback based on best practices. So we make sure that you're completely set up for success before you launch your campaign. Our high success rate is also thanks to education materials like this workshop and online resources that we always make free and accessible to all creatives. Following this workshop, I'll send through resources. So if you want to receive materials, we have a follow up email that includes links to other film budgeting resources as well as the deck. Just email me and I'll send that through. We don't have platform fees. That's another thing that makes us different from the other crowdfunding platforms. So you're more likely to raise the most money and collect the most money using Seed&Spark. Followers and rewards are features you can take advantage of that helps grow your audience and help you reach your goal. The rewards, how they work is at each level that you hit a different follower milestone, you unlock rewards, which include film festival waiver codes, free hosting on the blacklist, stuff like that. You can also use wish list and loans on our crowdfunding platform. So if someone wants to give you an in-kind donation, if they have gear they want to lend you, the value of that can also count towards your crowdfunding goal. And you just have to hit 80% in order to collect the funds you raise. So it's not all or nothing. So, what are some categories that make up a budget for a short, a feature, a web series, what have you? First and most important one, I hope, in when you're planning, cast and crew. If you're good and smart and want people to work with you again, this will typically be where you spend the most of your budget. For your first, maybe second short, you might have very kind and talented friends who offer to go without pay, but you should get into the habit of budgeting for day rates for crew and cast members based on their level of experience and what you're able to afford on that project. So some will be willing to negotiate, especially on a passion project or something they actually care about too, but be prepared for others to have a hard and fast day rate, and make sure you clarify if it's at 10 hours or 12-hour days, particularly those crew members who depend on this work for their full-time income. So I can speak from experience when I made my first short in 2018. My first short, first time directing, people were more willing to do favors back then, and this wasn't their full-time income. Then when I went to make my most recent short in Austin, last summer. A lot of my friends had become, full-time creatives. So they were like full-time DPs or full-time, sound recordists. So they really needed that income to pay their bills. And so less flexible on their rate, but I accounted that for that in the budget. So just something to keep in mind. Food, next most important category. Fuel for your cast and crew, depending on your shoot day schedule, including call and wrap times. You'll likely have between 2 to 3 meal breaks. Make sure those are meals and not just snacks. Snacks are craft services and meals are meals. Also have enough food. Find out ahead of going to set who has dietary restrictions and or food allergies, and make sure to accommodate for that. So when I'm crewing up and sending out my crew memo, I usually have people tell me their dietary restrictions and allergies, so I know that ahead of time and before we plan any meals. Props, wardrobe, and production design. Basically, every inanimate object you see in your frame. As a director, you have a vision for how this translates from script to screen. If you have the budget, you might hire an art director or production designer who will handle dressing the set and obtaining props, and then a wardrobe stylist who will curate the outfits of the main characters and improve the outfits of extras. But if you don't have the budget, this is something you can easily do yourself or with the help of your producer. Just make sure you have a tracking system for this. And we'll talk more in a little bit about how to track that for yourself if you're going to handle wardrobe and PD yourself. Gear and equipment next to cast and crew. This usually takes up the most of an indie filmmaking budget. You might get lucky and have a friend who can lend you a Red or an Ari Alexa for free. In that case, please introduce me. But more often than not, especially crew who depend on productions as a means of income, if they own their own gear, they will have rental rates along with their labor fee. Also, ask local camera shops if they offer any student or local indie filmmaker discount. If you know someone who attends or works at a university, that's another way to get discount or free access to gear. Make sure you're renting what you need and not what you think you need. What I typically do when I'm building out my gear budget is I'll have my DP recommend 3 stages of gear lists, and that includes for camera, lenses, and G&E. The first one is like the bare bones budget one, the cheapest, like what can we pull off with the least expensive gear rental list. The middle one is the moderate one. This is usually what I go for, and then maybe make some compromises here and there. And then the biggest one is the nice to have. So if we're trying to get some, if we have time or budget to get a really wild shot and we need a dolly for it or something else, usually that budget accounts for those like nice to have shots, but not the ones that we absolutely have to get. Um, Locations, if you're lucky, you can also get these offered as in-kind donations. Otherwise, you'll want to account for any location fees. Talk to your city or state film commission. This is where Tennessee Entertainment Commission can really help you out. Ask other indie filmmakers, see who can lend their space. It can cost a lot to shut down a business like a restaurant during prime hours. So can you shoot outside of their work hours? Do you have to pay for a location contact to be there to let you in and stay on site? Or can you get away with just having your crew there and having a producer contact for renting out their space? Transportation, you have to account for how your cast and crew is moving from location to location. You'll likely will need a van rental for gear. G&E and camera houses typically have this. Also, can you carpool? What's the parking situation like? Are you making people drive pretty far outside where everyone's based? Can you afford mileage and reimburse for gas, or is that something that you can't include in your budget? Check public transportation schedules. This happened to me on the second short I made. The first one I co-directed and produced with my brother, and we were filming in New Jersey, and the talent was coming in from New York. And that weekend, of course, conveniently, the train line or the bus line from New York to Montclair, where we were filming, was down. So we had to come up with alternatives to get them there and make sure we communicated that as well. Pre-production, this is often a forgotten piece of the budget, but this should really account for any expenses before you get to set. So printing scripts, meals or craft services for any pre-pro calls or auditions or location scouts, all should go into your pre-pro budget. Contingency, shit always hits the fan. Be prepared to have that buffer in your budget for when it does. I don't think I've ever like saved money on a short. It's always gone beyond what my anticipated budget is. So I always put that buffer in there. So let's break it down. Let's talk about breaking down a script. So here's what a high level script breakdown could look like. This is an example from my first short film, An Uncomfortable Woman. This script breakdown will basically tell you what you're responsible for to set up the scene. So if you don't have the budget for it, you're going to need to figure out a way to obtain the look you're going for or make cuts, which I'll give some advice on later in the workshop. So let's talk about the categories of columns to include here. Location, where does this scene take place? Are there more than one location for this sequence in the script? Interior, exterior, is it an interior shot or an exterior shot or combined? This is really important for your grip and electric team to know. Also thinking of setup time. Time is money. Time of day, another thing important for your G&E grip and electric team to know. Does the scene take place during the day or at night? If it's an interior night shot, but your shooting schedule has you filming during the day, you're going to need to account for that, like blacking out windows and adjusting lighting. Cast, which leads or supporting actors are in this scene? Extras, are there day players with one line or just background extras? How many do you need? Props and wardrobe, what should the cast be wearing in the scene? What items need to appear on screen? And then notes, this is anything related to the scene's breakdown to keep in mind. I like to put notes for the production designer or just specific notes around about the location in this section. All right, so location. So this is a printout of a scene, a portion, one page from a scene in my script. And what I did is I looked at the slug lines and I tried to determine how many locations do we have on this one page. We have one location, but two different shots, an exterior shot, an interior shot. So we were able to use the same location for both exterior and interior. I note what type of location did it have to be. I conveniently used my in-laws lake house, so that was a free location. And then I wanted an open layout kitchen with counter space for some of the action that is included in this scene. Characters is the next category I'm looking at when I do a breakdown. So right in this page of the script, I only have one character that's seen on screen. We do have a delivery guy, but that's off camera. We actually ended up just like having my sound mixer and sound designer just record, I think, her boyfriend delivering this line in ADR. So in this instance, we just need one person. We're paying for one person on screen talent. The next category I'm looking at, and you know, because this is my first short, of course, I went overboard with props. I was a comedy sketch writer before I started screenwriting. So of course I'm going to be, you know, writing in so many joke props that are really unnecessary for when you actually go to shoot. And then, you know, you're forced to sort of call back. So I highlighted all of the props here. It's important to know here that for some of them, like if you look at the bottom of my page, the box full of broken items, the relationship box, these are sort of interchangeable. I figured out that like I didn't need these exact items. So this is one way I saved money. What is really necessary for the joke here? What's disposable? So I worked with my production designer to come across like what did we already have on hand ourselves versus what was something easy we can borrow. So for example, the package of play handcuffs, like no one had that on hand, not our lifestyle choice. So I just cut that from my props list and so that I didn't have to buy it. So so now looking at your after you do your high level breakdown, I like to add tabs to my Google Sheets with category specific breakdowns. So you might not need every column here, but here are some examples to include for a more detailed location breakdown. So description of the needed location, script pages based on the location and expected shoot days, again, interior, exterior, time of day. I'll put like my preferred options while I'm location scouting and any notes like this location will be free if we go with it, or this location doesn't serve breakfast. So if we get in the morning, we can film for free. But if we slip into the afternoon, we're going to have to pay to close down the business. So different things that you might consider while you're location scouting and determining your locations and your script breakdown. And I do the same thing with casting. So here are some columns that I might include in a more detailed casting breakdown. Um, Also, I look at like, can I cut extras to save money? Like, especially if it's like a down and dirty indie short, and I want to figure out a way to like cheat it to make it look like there's more people. I do this a lot when I'm filming in a busy restaurant. Get that tighter shot, have people dirtying the shot, making it seem like there's more people with sound design than there really is. And Yeah, so there's pretty much these are the main categories that you're going to think about. Any notes for casting, like if they're going to have to kiss, if someone needs to know how to like break dance or something like that. These are all things that you should include in your casting breakdown for before you do your casting call. Props and production design, same rule applies here. Where can you save money? Um, so these are some of the columns that I'll include, and a really helpful section is the have, make, borrow, buy, which I always start with for props and production design. So is this an item I have? Is this an item I can make? Is this an item I can borrow from someone on the crew? Or the very last option is I have to buy this. If it's crucial to the scene and no one has it, I am not going to be able to make it. And then I also include a link to the item and the price so that you can more accurately track your props budget that way as well. But yeah, some tips for like trying to avoid buying, get creative. Like I usually post on social if I'm looking for something very specific. Facebook buy nothing groups, those are a good opportunity. Craigslist, if Craigslist isn't overrun by uh shady people anymore, probably still is. Wardrobe and hair and makeup. So I really like to not depend fully, but if I can, utilize the talents closets versus having to buy an entire new wardrobe for each character. A lot of times I'll have like very minimal lead characters that have specific wardrobe items needed, and then everyone else, the extras, will have specs that we share with them. And then I work with them to send me pictures of their outfits, and I just try to avoid logos and patterns and stuff like that. But yeah, you can very easily save money by just using your own wardrobe, or like leaning on talent to bring their own wardrobe. But yeah, make sure they bring options just in case, and try to pre-approve, because that definitely will take time once they get to set. And again, have, make, borrow, buy, um, another helpful way to save money before having to buy a piece of wardrobe. So something important to keep in mind for stunts and special effects: stunts add time, and time is money. So anything that's not standing or sitting pretty much is a stunt, like a walk and talk scene. That's pretty much a stunt. It adds time to your day. So just something to think about. Don't overload a day with stunts, because you will go into overtime and then have to pay overtime for your crew, or have to move scenes into the next day, and then maybe have to pay extra for that location on day two, etc. So definitely keep that in mind. And if you might need a stunts coordinator if it's a more complicated stunt, that's another person you have to budget for. These are some other things to consider in your script breakdown if they're relevant. So animals, I tend to always write in animals into the first drafts of my script, and then realize like I don't want to have to train a dog to do this, or like deal with like, I mean, I love dogs. I have my own dog, but he's a terrible actor. So ideally, like if it's not crucial to the scene, uh, see if you can cut it out. If not, if you really need this animal, you're going to need a trainer or handler. You're going to need a holding area for the animal. Kids, so if you're dealing with talent that is under 18, they are required to have a legal guardian on set. I learned this on my second short where we filmed in a middle school, or I guess it was a high school. I don't know. But we had underage talent. We had their parents on set. So those are more mouths to feed, something to keep in mind for craft services. They also have limited hours at different age levels. So that's another thing to keep in mind. If you're running over, you don't want to lose talent because of your schedule running over, and then you have to move that scene to the next day. Gear, an obvious and expensive one, craft services, post-production expenses, festival and distribution costs. That's a category a lot of people forget about because festivals often, have a different levels of fees when you're applying to them. Like definitely recommend trying to get notified about the early bird um, festival submissions when you can, because that's going to be the cheapest. So like after Chattanooga Film Festival ends, like go to Film Freeway and click watching and get notifications for when the early bird submission opens up again, so that you can pay the lowest amount for the film festival submission. Also, once you get into festivals, that's another cost. So think about like who from your crew is going. Is it somewhere you can drive? Is it somewhere you can crash with someone, etc.? Alrighty, so let's take a look at a final budget example. This is for my former coworker Bree. She's our crowdfunding specialist. If you've crowdfunded with Seed&Spark, you've probably talked to Bree before. So this is for one of her shorts called Buy-In, and she color coordinated based on pre-pro production, dish drone fest, food, transportation, props, and personnel. And so this was like an easy, neat way for her to keep track of each category and also each line item in her budget. So expected versus working budget. This is really helpful on every project that you have. This is something I always go back to my old budgets for, to know like what did I anticipate spending versus what did I actually spend. So expected is the quoted cost. This is what you anticipate it would cost, typically an estimate. And then the working is the actual cost, like what you paid for already and what it would really cost. So this is really helpful to see what costs more or less than you anticipated and help you plan for your next film. And tracking both of these categories helps you learn how to budget better. And then you can see the difference between your expected estimated budget versus your working budget, aka your actuals. So these are some things that will cost more than you think. So just be prepared. Transportation, I mentioned this earlier, but an example that came up on my second short is that we wrapped really late on the first day. So we ended up having to pay for an Uber for talent going from New Jersey to New York because the trains had stopped running at that point. Food, you should be breaking for a meal minimum every 6 hours. That's the SAG requirements. Again, like my shoots are always indie. I don't typically work with SAG talent, but it's nice to abide by these standards. I have a Costco membership, which is really helpful for craft services. So borrow a friend's membership or sign up for $60 a year. They don't pay me to say that. It's just easy and cheaper for when you're buying a lot of snacks or waters or etc. for a crew. Keep a balance between healthy energy boosting sweets, chips, pretzels, cookies, candy, fruit, trail mix, granola bars, waters, sparkling waters, sodas, or energy drinks, and coffee. Always make sure you have enough coffee on hand. Crew kits, another thing to keep in mind, your sound recordist may have their own crew kit, or they may invoice you for whatever they happen to rent, plus batteries. Grip and Electric may have their own kit. Hair and makeup will typically have a kit fee. Also, keep in mind if you need to do a hair and makeup trial, that's an additional fee, but will usually be less than their day rate. Crowdfunding incentives. If you're planning to crowdfund, take it from me. Do not try to spend money on these. I still have a crowdfunding merch from my first short in my closet. that I spent more money on than actually raised money off of. And also you can save on shipping if you avoid having like merch. Merch costs more to make than you'll make off of it. So if you can keep your incentives more digital and instant, it just helps you and helps your budget. Uh, Gear rentals, again, the three versions like I mentioned earlier, work with your DP and department heads on what is absolutely needed versus what is a nice to have on your gear list. Production insurance, ask local filmmakers or work with a production company that has it already. Most gear rental houses will require you have production insurance. Time. Is this a 10-hour shoot day or a 12-hour shoot day? Some crew will account for overtime if they go on a 10-hour rate. Carelessness. This happens all the time. Even pros will have mistakes happen. So if someone is rushing to put away a piece of gear and it gets damaged and then you don't find out until you're invoiced for the damaged item, like that's something you need to be mindful of. And a lot of times like the crew is not the one to pay for those mistakes, so just make sure you communicate as the director or producer, that for people to take their time putting away stuff and not just rush, because rushing usually leads to costing you money. And once you get those invoices back, these are things that may cost more than you think. The post production version. So music licensing, I learned this on my first short. I got majorly screwed. Your goal should be to license worldwide with all territories in perpetuity, which means forever, and then across all universe, which is all mediums. If you can't get a commitment to those categories of music licensing, then you may need to break up your licensing into a festival circuit or public screening agreement, and then go back to renew for your online premiere or streaming. I've had this happen before, especially if you're dealing with bigger artists. They may have separate master and publishing fees. You'll be dealing with different contacts, double the amount in your budget if you have to license both the master and publishing fees. But if you want to keep it real simple, just like find friends that make music and ask if they would be generous enough to license their music for free, or license it for a small fee, and then you're able to most likely use that for all purposes and not have to like go into your edit and remove and swap out music when you want to do an online premiere. That happened to my first short, and that cost me a lot. ADR, so this is going to be determined after your sound mixer does a pass, but also you will include any VO you plan to record over scene. So think about like, do you need to book a studio for this? Do you need to pay a day rate or half day rate for the sound recordist, etc.? Color correcting, make sure people don't look bonkers, account for different skin tones, and film festival submissions I mentioned, but these can really rack up. So yeah, if you crowdfund with us, hit those follower milestones, we have free or discounted submission fees for a variety of festivals. And then hard drives, make sure you have backup to your backup. I feel like I am constantly, well, at least in my first short, because I didn't know what I was doing in my DP filmed in 8K, but always make sure you have enough hard drives to back up and to back up your backup. So here's a really chaotic budget example. And we wanted to show this example because as a what not to do. This is from one of Bree's other shorts. She learned that there were items she didn't need or that didn't work for what she needed. Like she got an iPhone lav mic and then she didn't need an iPhone lav mic. So she kept this still so that she can see where she went wrong. It's a bad budget, but it's accurate because she tracked everything. So think about like what you don't just go and start placing orders or not having your department heads weigh in on certain gear before you're renting or buying stuff. That was the big takeaway for her here. COVID cost considerations. I know pretty much most cities and states have lifted all of their restrictions, but if there is another version of COVID, another bubonic plague, who knows? These are just some things to keep in mind for when there are restrictions for set. I know people have COVID compliance officers, keeping PPE on hand, keeping craft services COVID friendly, minimizing cast and crew, having holding rooms. Hopefully, we won't have to reinstate a lot of these again. And now it's time to kill your darlings, but not all of them. We're going to discuss like what are the ones we want to completely kill versus what are the ones that we are going to die on that hill for. So be creative, but be realistic. Really make sure that you build in that buffer. You want to cushion yourself when you're building your budget. Yes, indie filmmakers can be really flexible in what they're able to get done, but also be realistic. If you're trying to like cut out meals, don't do that. So these are different tips on how to save money before you kill your darlings. Connecting with local small businesses. I do this a lot on my projects. Like I just hosted a screening and was able to get bagels and coffee for free from two local businesses that I've worked with for years on donating to our set, like a couple jugs of coffee or a day old bagels, stuff like that. So yeah, getting in-kind donations for locations or craft services. Make sure you make it as valuable to them as it is to you. So I like to always, include them in the credits, give them social media shout outs if I'm doing a crowdfunding campaign, borrow from people in your community, set up a barter system. Like that's a lot of indie filmmakers in your community, wherever you are based. Typically, like as you're starting off your careers, there's a lot of like, I will edit your short for free if you direct my short for free, etc. Go guerrilla. It's better. It's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. And here are some tips on how to decrease your locations budget. Combining. So cheating locations. We have some tips in the next slide on that, but we'll talk a little bit more about that. But basically, it's like, how can you use one location and make it seem like it's multiple locations? Prioritize the needs versus the nice to haves. Use stock footage. I did this on the second short I made because we had way too many location changes and shots in our shot list, and it was really clutch for being able to insert certain quick moments that didn't require talent to be in the scene. So we were able to license stock footage for that, and then cut them. Is the location crucial to the scene? Can you shoot it at home? Yeah, there's always ways to decrease your locations budget. Here are some tips on cheating one location as two. So swapping the cushions or bedding in a bedroom, implying that it's a different apartment altogether. Rearranging a room layout. Try to avoid shooting windows because window styles and molding are often unique to the building architecture and may be a giveaway. Using different, very specific production design choices to distinguish that you're in two different locations, even though you're shooting in one. Different lighting, tighter shots, etc. Some tips to decrease your props budget. Always ask around before you buy it. Make it. You can get really crafty. You can look up online what are items that you can make, or enlist the help of your friends to help you make. You can fake it, just implying that a prop is there without it physically or fully being there, or just cut them. Like, how crucial is this prop to your scene? Or is it just like a little joke that you added in? So unions, I'll go into like sort of high level tips. As I mentioned, I typically work on like indie productions, so I don't deal with SAG talent a lot. But if you are bringing on SAG talent, make sure you're abiding by the minimums. Start paperwork early. There's going to be daily paperwork, so assign your AD or producer to handle it. Again, 6 hours before you have to break for a meal. the actor's pension fund may come into play, especially if you get your project distributed. SAG-Indie is really the best resource for you to hit up to get all your or your questions answered, because they work with a lot of indie filmmakers who happen to use SAG talent in their projects. All right. So in crowdfunding and pitching investors and talking about budgeting, it's not about the money, it's what the money makes possible. Paying cast and crew equitable wages, more shooting days, cooler wardrobe and props, great locations, a film that represents a group of people that aren't usually represented well, if at all. So when you're talking about money, you're asking for people to support a project that they're going to help come to life. And that's why in crowdfunding, we usually tell people to phrase it that you're not having them donate, but instead you're having them commit or pledge an amount to the project so that it feels more collaborative. They're a part of it as much as you're a part of it, even though you're doing a lot more work than them. But their money is getting your work made. And that's the important thing to think about. And that's it for the workshop. But now we can chat through any specific questions people may have about budgeting. Yeah, so feel free to jump into the chat or take your camera and camera on, audio off, and ask away. Or maybe I answered everyone's question. Um, But yeah, do you use any budgeting software for breakdowns? So I don't. I have a friend who is a full-time producer, um, and I can't remember what software she uses. I'm gonna Google it and then it'll probably come up. I've known people that use Movie Magic. Yeah, I think Movie Magic is a big one that people use. But I usually do it like down and dirty in a Google sheet. Um, and yeah, but I know like full like producers will because I believe like the Movie Magic is the most popular one. Oh, Hot Budget is another one. But from my understanding, it's like software that you have on your computer. So it's like less shareable unless you have the program. So that's why I like to use Google Sheets because then it's a working budget that, different crew members can hop in and update with actuals and estimates. Speak a bit more about production insurance, specifically for first time shorts producers or student productions. Yeah, so here's where I'll really depend on the other indie filmmakers in the film scene I'm at. So, like, I started my film career in Austin. Um, I didn't go to film school. I did not know what a lot of filmmaking entailed. My experience on set was for like dumb social media assets for like clients. So I asked around. I had a lot of people that were through the UT Film School. So said like, "What do you do for production insurance?" And someone that has done a short film production will have a reference for you. Some people get away with not having production insurance, especially if they're able to just get their gear through their school. But because I was renting from a gear house, I had to get production insurance. And honestly, like I just used what was referred to me by my producer. Then the last couple shorts I've made, I've used production insurance through my brother has a production company for his day job. And so he already has production insurance for his like day job shoots, so we use that same production insurance to cover us for our narrative shorts. um but yeah, this is where I would just like ask around, like people within your indie film community, to say like, hey, what do you use, what have you used, can you refer me to a company to get like some coverage based on the gear we're renting and the type of production we have. Any other questions? And feel free to email me if you want the workshop deck or follow up resources. I can send that through. And yeah, in the workshop deck, I actually use Bree built, my old coworker Bree built that budget tracker, all the different breakdown columns. And so while we don't have that template built, you can just copy over those same columns into your own Google Sheet. And that's what I use for breaking down my script for my shorts still today. No problem. Yeah, I'll hang on for another 5-10 minutes. And if there's no other questions, then asking for forgiveness, not permission. Do you think it's better to try to get permission first or just go off of kissing the ground, praying to get away with it? So this really depends on the scenario. I do this a lot with locations where I will ask for forgiveness, not permission. So and Tennessee Entertainment Commission probably doesn't endorse this, but because essentially you're supposed to get approval for wherever you're shooting, whether that be like a public park or a private street. But with indie film, like a lot of times we'll say, well, we're stealing the shot, and that's usually like if we didn't necessarily plan it out, or if we already got approval for and like location agreements signed for all of the other like private businesses and locations we're filming at, but there's like a street corner that we want to quickly get that shot. We just oh, production insurance, Gisela, thank you for her hopping in. um i I think I can ask you to unmute, Gisela. I'm not sure if your sound is working, but yeah, TennesseeEntertainment.com. That's a great if you're filming in Tennessee, they have production insurance resources. But yeah, the I would say like Anthony, I'd calculate the risk. I'd also talk about it with your producer, or like the DP I work with is, works on both like professional shoots and indie shoots. So like, there's just like a level of calculated risk in it when it comes to asking for forgiveness, not permission. And for me, it's usually around like a location where, as long as we're not bothering anyone, as long as we're not stopping traffic, as long as we're not causing any damage and we pick up after we leave, and if we keep it really light, so it's like we're stealing that shot, we're gonna have like just the talent, the DP, sound, and then lighting once they're done setting up. So those are the kind of considerations around asking for forgiveness, not permission. I think, a lot of people will be generous when you explain that you're an indie filmmaker and you're broke and trying to, make your first short, etc. But yeah, there's certain places that might not go so far. Like when I was in Houston, luckily it wasn't for an indie shoot; it was for a day job shoot. And there we had like a very tiny crew, and like some park cop came over and was like, do you have your location release for this? And I did, but like usually when I'm in filming in public or in parks, like no one really asks that. So luckily we had, because it was a day job shoot, because it was for a client, we had to make sure that we had that approval. But yeah, and then a lot of times it can be end up being really cheap for parks. Like it's like, oh, donate $25 to the Parks and Rec department. But yeah, the Tennessee Entertainment Commission does not endorse that. Um, but so I would say if like depending on where you're filming, reach out to the Entertainment Commission. Like Texas Film Commission has been a resource for me. They usually have a list of locations that are like indie film friendly. New Jersey, yeah, I've shot in New Jersey, and like it depends on the town. So like with Montclair, we like spoke to there was like certain paperwork we had to fill out based on where we were filming outside, like if they were on public sidewalks, etc. And then other locations we asked the businesses directly. And yeah, So, I mean, I would say the ask for forgiveness was more in my first short, and now it's like the productions I work on, I have to make sure they're buttoned up. Um, good note, Michael. We often don't get permits, and I fully agree with your philosophy, but also a lot of insurance policies have void clauses if you're shooting without permits. So just be careful of that as a concern. Yeah, that's good to know. Yeah, always make sure you know what your production insurance covers and what will make the agreement null and void if you're um, doing things a little bit more riskily um, than you typically are. Yeah, that ask for forgiveness one is so controversial. And we typically take it out when we're teaching, like, with universities, because they can't, like, it's not an endorsable thing, especially when you're partnered up with, film commissions and stuff like that. I'll probably take it out the next time we teach this. Um, if you're shooting in an area where you don't live, do you often hire a local locations professional? Yeah, that's usually helpful, or you can also, reach out to their film commission. Again, like, they should have a catalog of locations based on what you're looking for. If you're looking for a conference room, if you're looking for, a restaurant, if you're looking for a house, but I know, yeah, depending on your location needs, you may wanna use a scout if it's, like, a very specific or if you're able to travel to that location and scout yourself and then find out what agreements you need signed from who in order to shoot the location that you're ideally trying to shoot in. um but yeah, I would say I'm trying to think. I've only used location scouts on my, like, day job shoots. I don't think I've used a location scout on indie filmmaking. I usually end up, like, doing that myself, or like, working with the producers to, like, scout. Um, when I shot in New Jersey and I was doing pre-pro, I was still based in Austin. I just had to depend on crew members who were based in Jersey to do the location scouting themselves. And yeah, and then you can just approve based on photos and you know. But yeah, location scout is usually like a nice to have, um, if it's not something I can do or help get the, like, state or city film commission to give me some referrals. Cool. I'll stay on for 3 more minutes and then, I'll hop and, yeah, feel free to email with any other questions, and good luck on your projects. I hope you get all of the funding for all of the categories you're trying to budget for. I feel like that's the biggest, like, every filmmaker I meet, it's like it's not just like how to break into the industry, it's like how do you get the funding to make your next project? How do you get the funding to make a feature when, you've spent your career making shorts? Like, that's like the big lofty goal is getting funding, figuring out how to keep a lean and mean budget. Yeah, no problem. Hope everyone enjoys the rest of Chattanooga Film Festival. I think it's or you're wrapping up because it's been going on since last weekend, I think. But yeah, hope you've been enjoying programming and keep supporting indie filmmakers. And yeah, if anyone's thinking about crowdfunding for their project, definitely hit me up. And good luck on all your projects. Alrighty. Yeah. Great resource. Again, Tennessee Entertainment Commission. Um, I will drop a little blurb about what they do too. so that you can follow along. So yeah, if you're based in Tennessee, definitely take advantage of Tennessee Entertainment Commission. If you're based in another state, look up your local and state film commissions because they're there to work with you and help make things easier for you to keep productions local. So definitely see what tax incentives there are in the state you live in, etc. Thanks, Giselle. And thank you, Chattanooga. All right, I'm gonna head to my next call, but good luck on all your projects and thanks everybody. Thanks, Chattanooga. Have a good one.